Okay, so this is a quick tutorial on how to use Innovation Launchpad to control Ableton. This will also work for other MIDI controllers, push units, and any number of other devices that actually give considerably more control and tactile options to you, but the Launchpad is considered sort of the primary one that became popular early on, and all the things I'm going to show you here with the Launchpad actually will apply to pretty much all those other controllers anyway. So we're going to get started with pulling in a demo session that comes with Live. And to do that, we're going to go all the way up here to the Help menu. We're going to go into Help View. That's going to open up this column here on the right of the screen. Click on What's New in Live 9. And then over here, click on a Live Set. And this is going to put in a demo set that comes with Live. And you'll notice a couple things changed. One, my Launchpad, a bunch of LEDs lit up. We'll get to those in just a moment. And the other thing is that my screen now has been populated with a whole bunch of information. Now, right now, what you're looking at on the screen is called Arrangement View. And the Arrangement View is extremely useful for some things we're going to get to in later projects. But for now, I just want to be able to see all of my individual clips and things like that and how it corresponds to my Launchpad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this little button here in the right corner that's got the gray bars that are all going up and down. And when I do that, you'll now see that I am in what is called Session View, and I can see that up on my clips here it corresponds exactly to what's on the Launchpad, including the colors, the positioning, everything about it is identical, and that's very much on purpose. Now I can, if I want, use the mouse and I can launch clips like I always have been doing, but the whole purpose of the Launchpad is so that I don't have to use the mouse and I can take control by actually touching pads on the Launchpad. So for example, let's say I wanted to launch some clips. Rather than using the mouse, I can literally just press the corresponding pad on the Launchpad. So I'm going to launch the third clip down for the drums, and then I'm going to launch this shaker pattern and this clip and this clip and so on. And I can basically pull up whatever I want, however I want, and I have total control over whatever I want to do. I can also launch scenes in the same way that I used to do that with the mouse from the buttons that are underneath the master fader. Well, those correspond to these pads here on my Launchpad. So let's say I want to launch everything in scene 5. I go here to this button, I press it, and now everything from scene 5 is playing just as though I did it with the mouse. So I've got really good control over everything that is going on here. So what else can I do? Well, this is called Session Mode, which you can see here. I just reset, and that gives me all of my clips. I can go to Mixer Mode, and now I have some other functionality here that I can do. So the first button here, you notice these are lit up now. This one says Volume, and when I press on it, what it does is it gives me control of the faders on the mixer. And you can actually see that as I move these faders, you can see the faders on the mixer changing, and it's also changing the sound that you're hearing. And I can take these in combination. I can do all kinds of interesting things, whatever I really want. I can also go in and I can control, let's change some of these volumes so it's not quite so crazy loud there. And I can go in and, for example, I can do panning. Panning is left to right relationships. Now, on the Launchpad, in order to have it correspond to each of the individual channels, it's going to be up and down instead of left and right. So for example, my drums right now are in the center. I can move them all the way to the right by going up. I can move them all the way to the left by going down, put those back in the center, and I can control panning that way. The other thing I can do back in Session Mode is I can use these navigation buttons here at the top left, and I can change what area of the set my Launchpad is focused on. So for example, if I start moving to the right, I am starting to get the ability to change which tracks I am focused on, and you'll notice the pink area up on the screen has changed as well, because the first 4 tracks are no longer on the Launchpad. So if I want to go back, I got to go to the left, and now I've got all of them available. I can also do the same thing where I'm scrolling down, and you can see that I'm losing some of the scenes because they're no longer in focus on the Launchpad. If I have more scenes, I could scroll through them. For this particular demo, we only have the original 8, so I'm going to go back to this default setting. Now back here in the Mixer Mode, I've got control of a couple of other things that I want to show you really quick. And these buttons are all labeled. So you've got volume, which gives us levels, panning, which gives you spatial placement we've talked about before. You can do how much effects you're sending to A, how much to B. this button here, the stop button, well, one of the things that I can do is I can press on one of these and I can stop, for example, my drums if I want, or I can stop everything if I want. And now I'm back to the beginning here. I want to start it back up again, the whole scene, go back to session mode. And here we go as that cycles back around for my synchronized drums and, well, synchronized everything actually to my timing clock. So here we are back in mixer mode really quick. I've also got mute here, the yellow, so I can mute things. Like for example, let's mute that shaker. Shaker's gone. Bring the shaker back. I can solo things. Solo the shaker. Everything else is temporarily muted. Now everything's back in. So lots and lots of control on mixer mode, lots and lots of control on session mode. So let me stop all of these for just a moment, and let's talk about the other two modes that we have on our Launchpad. So to do this next bit, user 1 and user 2, these allow us to play the instruments in Ableton using a grid configuration, and there's two different what are called maps. So user 1 is set up to map the instruments that are drum sets. And different drum kits have different sounds, but for example, you'll notice that they all will have a kick drum right here on this key, and I'll show you some of the others here in just a moment. User 2 is for things that are more melodic, chords, bass lines, melody instruments, what have you. Lots of different variations, and you can actually remap things yourself if you really want to, and we'll get into that another time. But for now, user 1 for drum kits, user 2 for everything else, just to keep it simple. Now to show you how this works, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm actually going to create a new set really quickly, just to show you how these other two modes work. So I'm going to go to new live set. I'm not going to save this demo one because we were just using it to show you how the basics of the Launchpad works. So now I have a live set. What I'm going to now do is I'm going to load in a drum kit into a MIDI track so that I can play on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to drums here, and I'm going to use this one here. It says Kit Core Session Dry. You can use any of these kits if you want. And you'll notice now at the bottom, once it loads, I actually have a grid. And this grid at the bottom shows me what samples are loaded into each pad, and it corresponds to this lower quadrant here. So for example, when I hit this pad here, I get my kick. There's my snare, there's my hi-hat, and all my other sounds. So I can go in and play patterns. And so on. So what am I going to do with that? Well, let's record something. Now to do that, I'm going to do something very similar to what I did in earlier projects. I'm going to go over here, I'm going to turn on my metronome. I'm going to leave the tempo at 120. I could certainly raise it up or lower it or whatever I want, but I'm just going to leave it here at 120 where it defaults. I'm also going to go in and I'm going to turn on record quantization. I'm just going to use eighth notes. I don't have to do this if I don't want to. I could certainly quantize after, as we've talked about, but just for the sake of this demonstration and to keep everything flowing evenly, that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to go to session mode, and now I can pick any one of these clips here on my Launchpad to record to. So I'm going to select one, and then I'm going to go in to user mode, and I am going to start recording. The other thing that I can do if I want is I can include a count off so that I have time to switch over. So the way I do that is over by the metronome here, count in. So do I want 1 bar? Do I want 2 bars? I'm going to do 2 bars. That means I'm going to get a full 2 bars before it starts recording. And if I can catch it right, I can record all the way through and it'll immediately start recording for me right when I start playing. So let's see if I can do that. So here we go. I'm going to press the record button on the Launchpad, jump over to user 1, then use this lower quadrant to play my quick little drum pattern here. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, and. Not bad. Now I let it go another measure. So I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to trim off this extra bit, and it cycles back through. I've got myself a nice little drum beat that I can edit, I can add, I can do whatever I want. Over here again, mixer mode. We'll just stop all of those. Take this off of record enable. Now my session is still playing, right? And I've got that metronome going, so we definitely want to turn that metronome off. And stopped our set, and now I've got, back in session mode, there's my clip. And if I press this clip here, there's my drum beat. So, a couple different things I can do from here. Let's turn that one off again here real quick. Back in session mode, let's add another virtual instrument here, but this time instead of being a drum, we're going to use user 2 on a melodic instrument. So let's find another instrument here. We'll go in and let's look at the instrument rack, and how about just a basic piano here. We'll just take this grand piano, how about that? Drop that right there. And I'm going to use my drum beat this time as my timekeeper rather than the metronome, since I recorded a drum beat anyway. And what I'm going to do is in session mode, I'm going to start my drum beat. Now when I hit one of these clips, Ableton likes to start recording by default right on the start of the measure. So if I time it right, I can actually prep the clip with a button press before the start of the measure, quickly switch over to user 2, and then record my notes. It's a little bit tricky, you got to practice it, but just so you can see it done one time. And here we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and. And we stop, and it goes over again. Now I've got a loop. What does all that sound like? Well, I can start my drum beat, and I can bring in my piano when I'm ready. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, go. There it is, and I can stop my drums if I want. Bring them back in, stop the piano, start it over, and both are out now. So, lots of control options, lots of different things you can do. I'm very excited to see what you can do with the Launchpad and Ableton Live.